He is Luke Fickell on Wilde and Tausch. Coach, how are you?
I'm doing well, man. I never knew exactly where the Italian club was, but I like the reference that you gave next to the ballet, so I take it you're a ballet guy. If Tausch was to give that, which restaurant would he say it's by? Because I know that Tausch kind of does everything based on food and where would be close to the Italian club based on, Tausch's restaurants.
Yeah, I think, I don't know how far, but, Luke, I don't give out free advertising, but Carnivore is right down there, isn't it, Jason?
Sort of. It's a little ways away. Yeah, they love you over there. All right.
I just figured Tausch does everything based on food, kind of references. You are more
Why would you think that?
Ballet and, some other deeper things that maybe –
That's true.
Offensive line, that's just
fair.
the way they normally
That's
kind of run.
Yeah.
All right, so let's get into this before we talk more about the Big Red Rally tomorrow night and the state of college football in general. And Tausch didn't want me asking you if you were going to leave to become an NFL defensive coordinator, since that seems to be the trend in college football. I do want to get to this, though, because I get a lot of grief. I've covered the Packers now for a really long time. I have a reputation for asking longer-winded questions. You've probably experienced those on your visits to our show, like you are right now. But I'm curious, you and Tausch would do an interview each week for games. And he likes to tell us he's not a media guy. He's a football guy. He's an analyst guy. He's not a media guy. So how would you critique the questions that he posed to you on the Badgers radio network?
I got to give it to him. The D-line guys like myself are a little bit more sophisticated and probably would come up with, even though we're football guys, some in-depth.
Sure.
He gave me softballs. He kind of lobbed them up to me. I do appreciate that. I think he understands that while, 1.5 hours or 2 hours before the game, my head might not be in a great space to, dive into some deep interviews and deep questions. So I think that we're on the same page with how he's done it. I don't want to, kind of poke the bear a little bit. Then all of a sudden next year I start getting these really in-depth, deep questions 2 hours before the game, and I'm not sure I could handle it myself.
Yeah, this is my favorite part. I'll know that there's guys that aren't going to play, and I'll say, so Luke, is this guy going to – and then he'll say, Ches obviously got hurt I think it was the Purdue game, and 2 weeks later there's a bye, and I said something about another player, and he goes, well, Ches is out. So he tries to throw a crumb out, as far as what's happening, but I can't morally safer him down and pin him as far as what about Braylon and what about any of these other guys that are questionable for the game.
I like to kind of keep it a little bit of some guessing work, right? I mean, you want them to tune in to the start of the game. And so, I know that it's a national, what you put out there is kind of nationally known. So I know that the other team is listening 2 hours before the game intently on the questions that you ask, and are going to adjust their game plan based on some of those things. So I try to be really general.
That's smart. Smart move by you, Coach.
All right.
Well, I just don't want to talk a whole lot.
We all know that we all prefer Matt LePay over him anyway. All right, so let's talk a little bit about the state of college football, because I do want to get into this, and then we'll talk Badger football specifically. Luke, Tausch and I both love college football. I mean, he gives me grief, but I still watch bowl games. I like bowl games. I am old school. I'm also happy that players are getting a cut of the billions upon billions of dollars that college football generates. I'm on board with that. But I am worried about where college football is. And we had Tim Hasselbeck, friend of show, join us, and he was telling us, he was calling ACC games, and we had him on because Jeff Hafley has left Boston College to be the Packers defensive coordinator. But he was talking about the challenges that you guys as head coaches face now, and re-recruiting guys that are already on your team, and dealing with the transfer portal and the challenges of NIL. You are old school. You played this game in a different era. You gave Tausch grief for all the times that he didn't play, and you were playing a lot at Ohio State. But how different is the game now, and how do you negotiate all these different challenges that come with this job that your coaches that you played for certainly did not face?
Well, that was a long question, but let me try to answer one of the six ones that were in there. I don't ever say the game is changing. I say it's evolving, right? Because really, when it comes down to it, the ball goes down, those 5 guys up front or 6 guys up front, and those other 4 guys or 5 guys or 3 guys that they're across from, that doesn't change, right? And that's where the game is still the beauty of what it is. So the other things in college football are maybe changing, but it's an evolution, I think. People like to say now that the kids are getting a cut. Well, you know what? I really don't know that that's the truth. I think that maybe the top 10%, the top 5% are getting something that maybe, is can be, not say life-changing, but at least can be a difference maker. What I don't think what I still enjoy about the college ranks is keeping a little bit of a utopia where everybody, as they grow, is getting something. I know they are. They're getting a scholarship and things like that, but that's where I think that, we can do a better job as we move forward with this thing, is trying to find some structure where, some way, somehow everybody, is somewhat taken care of, because they're all continuing to, be out there every day and grind and get better. And so my traditional side of me that says, how do we keep ourselves distant from what the next level is I think there's still some semblance of let's have a little bit more of that utopia. Let's find a way that everybody a part of it is being taken care of in some way, and not just focus, which is what I think has happened on the top 5%. And a lot of other guys are not getting the same experiences that I enjoyed, and maybe not even some of the same growth that, in the long run comes back to be something that's really special.
All right, this question will be comparatively shorter, but still pretty long. So the other part of this that I want to understand, I saw Rick Pitino yesterday or 2 days ago said that college basketball needs a salary cap for their teams. I don't want to go further down that road, but I do want to ask you this. As a parent of athletes, we talk a lot about overcoming adversity and control what you can control. Our girls are 14 and 13, and they face adversity. And I do think that there is a feeling about college sports right now where with the transfer portal, if you face adversity, you don't deal with the adversity, you go somewhere else where they might want you instead. How are you navigating how you coach, knowing that you want guys to grow through the adversity that they face and winning a starting job if they're not a starter right away, versus the challenges of you want guys to stay, you don't want them jumping into the transfer portal?
So I would tell you, I do not, and I'll get out as soon as we have to coach different. That's not something that I want to, kind of get involved in. And people would say, well, you have to coach a little bit different. No, I really don't think you do. I think you just got to find, different ways. And I don't mean like, okay, well, people would say, well, it's hard to get on a guy and you got to, because they could leave. But what I try to reiterate within our program to our coaches and myself is, look, what it does for us is it reminds us that we better have the greatest relationship with the guys within our program. And sometimes, those are hard when they're young, because you haven't had those banked hours, and then you get into a season and the guys that aren't playing, in some ways you forget about, just because of the, what's on the plate and every week, and there's a routine. And, so some of those guys that are on the scout team, get forgotten or get, overlooked for 6 months. And I think I look at the positive behind the transfer portal, not that there are a ton of it, but I believe it just reminds us that the only way you can have success and maintain your guys and keep them here so that you can develop them is to have a greater relationship with them, because they have options. And what that does for us is, hey, the only way you're going to, like I said, the only way you're going to help them fight through these tough times is if they really trust you.
Yeah, and Luke, I guess one of the things, and you said this when you got hired, was, building the program and having those kids that you recruit, their families, and you can go and you're not digging into the transfer portal and grabbing 10 or 12 guys. Well, the landscape has kind of changed, and that just makes what you were just talking about that much more tricky. But you have to be almost to speed up your process of getting to know guys so that you can get that understanding and build that trust so that people will kind of be ready to play and be ready to grow with you through some of those tough times.
It is. I mean, that's why I think that in the recruiting process, hopefully whether it's a year and a half, that everything is hopefully some way, somehow based on a relationship and trust. I know there's a lot of smoke and mirrors in recruiting, a lot of, different talk and hot air, but the reality is there is a relationship that's built and to get it with the family as well, because let's be honest, if things don't go their way, they have options, and it's easy to move on. If things really go their way, they have even more options because there are no rules and everybody reaches out to them. So either way, they have options. They really have the control, and the only thing that you got is what that relationship, how deep that relationship, and is how much they're going to trust you. And that doesn't mean you can get away with because you have a great relationship without taking care of them, in the world that we're in. And that's where I feel like we have to have a way of doing it. But I really believe with the right guys, it's still going to be a little bit deeper than just the monetary value.
Yeah. So, Luke, with one of the things I thought Tanner Mordecai, one of those transfer portal kids, came in and was absolutely fantastic. I think, fought through it, and you saw it. You guys talked about it, his leadership and what he did. And he's now gone. How do you assess, bringing Van Dyke in? And how everybody always wants to know about the quarterback position. Can you give us a quick little overlay as far as how you see it before you head into spring ball?
Yeah, I mean, not that Tyler was here with Tanner, but I think that if you could say, how would you go about even a 1 year or 2 year guy? Like, if I could have videoed and do a a kind of a manuscript of what the best way of being able to do things were, I would document everything that Tanner Mordecai did and hand it to every guy that walks into place that's only got a year or two. I mean, like, he did it phenomenal. Obviously injuries and some things like that, but just the way he handled, the way he came about it. So we've got a little bit of an example. Tyler didn't see it, but I think he's kind of fallen right in line so far with doing a lot of the same things and just coming in and going to work and, the ability now to at least do some football stuff you can do, as opposed to what it was, 5-6 years ago when you couldn't do any football stuff in the off season. So we're seeing a progression. He's getting more comfortable at just understanding, the tempo of how the ball gets in and gets out and a lot of the things that we do. And I think right now, he's really excited. He's a sponge. He's learning. He's competing. But most importantly, I think he's building some of those deep-rooted relationships with the guys around him.
Yeah, and you had to be excited watching the receiving core at the ReliaQuest Bowl. That's got to be an exciting thing looking. You got another year in with Phil Longo in that offense. And so can you talk a little bit about the receiving core, the excitement you have there, and then how you're going to go about replacing what Braylon did production-wise? You have Ches coming back, but can you just kind of take us in that receiver and running back room, how you see that shaking out as spring gets started?
A lot of questions in that long question there, I
know.
Say.
I mean,
yeah, but it was a lot shorter. It's more to the point, but it's not as long-winded. I try to get more info, Jason.
Those O-line guys, they've always got a leg up on everybody. So, no, I really do. I mean, coming out of the bowl game, I think what those guys did in that 4 weeks leading up to the bowl prep really, really, really kind of showed. And yes, health and things like that, but pretty much everybody's back with a few little additions and some young guys. But I think what we found was the ability to continue to create that competition. Those guys are getting more comfortable in how we do things, and everybody wants to talk about the tempo, and how snapping the ball and how 16, 17 seconds. Like, we're not as big into that as it is the tempo of it's very I'd say consistent in how fast the quarterback's got to get the ball in and out and get the ball into those wide receivers' hands. And I think we saw a bit more of that progression in the 3 weeks leading up to the bowl game. I think we, did a really good job at, kind of that connection between the quarterback and wide receiver that, I think we lost a little bit during the season. But I think there's some depth there. I think there's some competitiveness that's going to really kind of create, a deeper group. And I think what we saw from even Tretch is a guy that we didn't see all year in the bowl game. It makes you feel really good about where those guys are and where they're headed. At the tailback position, I think it's going to be a little bit different, right? I mean, I think that spring ball is going to be really unique. Now, obviously Ches is back, and we know what Ches can do. He won't get a big load, if any load, in the spring, to be honest with you. So we'll see, a bit more of the young guys. And I mean that from a transfer and Tyree and even Gideon, who's in here, along with the guys that have been here with Jackson and Cade. But I think that one is going to really take a lot longer to figure out, okay, what's the kind of the order here? How do these guys go about it? Can you play? Are there two? Are there three? Right? And the two freshmen that are actually coming in that won't be here until the summer are going to, in my mind, play a role in that. So that's a little bit more like, okay, Coach Baldo, we've got some work to do here, and that's going to be a little bit more of a longer process to figure that out before game one. But I think the wide receivers is one of those ones where you're seeing it and you're going to see a lot more of it in the spring.
Look at that. Luke gave us a little injury news. Something I couldn't get all pregame. He gave us a little bit spring game. All right, Luke, last one for me. The schedule. Nick Saban decides to retire before he makes the trip up to Camp Randall, but the schedule is daunting. Big challenges. That gets you excited, or how do you view this schedule that's coming up? It's going to be a big challenge.
I know you guys might not believe this, but I really don't
day to day.
I honestly, like, I know we've got Alabama. I'm not sure if it's game 2 or 3. Don't even need to tell me.
Bad question.
I know. I think we've got SC and Oregon. I honest to goodness, I have not looked, to be honest. And for me, because it's going to the Big Ten has changed, and it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher, and so that's exciting. But it doesn't change the way that which we have to prepare. But I am using it in the sense that guys understand, what it is that we're preparing for, and why that, regardless of where we are and where we need to go is going to be the challenge. And yes, it's exciting, but it's also one of those things that regardless of where we were, I don't use it as much. When we get to the summer, we'll start doing some of the preparations for the first 4 games, and now you'll dive into those things a lot more, and that's when it starts to get a little bit more real and say, oh, okay. But now it's just like, hey, let's go, let's push, let's get better at every single thing we do, every single day, regardless of who we're playing in week 1 or week 3.
Talking with University of Wisconsin head football coach Luke Fickell on Wilde and Tausch. Want to remind you again, you can go to uwalumni.com/events and register for tomorrow night's Big Red Rally with the Alumni Association's Milwaukee chapter. I don't need to go through the menu again, although now Luke knows exactly what he'll be eating. It is at the Italian Community Center down in the 3rd Ward in Milwaukee. All right, Luke, last one for me. And I'm just curious. I'm a process guy, so maybe this will be better than that question about the schedule, which you didn't even answer. But I want to understand. I want to understand how different things are in year 2 for you, right? I mean, you get here. You obviously coached in the bowl game a year ago, or at least sort of coached in the bowl game a year ago. But you're putting together a staff. You're getting to know your team. How different now are things for you in year 2 now that you have a year in, you know what you're up against? There are lots of changes, including with your conference. But how different is year 2 for you?
It definitely is different. I think that for me, there's things you are pinpoint that you're attacking, as opposed to year 1. I mean, it's like it's a broad brush of everything. And the great thing about actually playing those games, especially year 1, you find out a lot more about your environment, your culture, your people, your guys. I mean, there's much more of a focused attention to the things we need to do a hell of a lot better than there is in year 1, because it's such a broad overview, and you're trying to make sure everything is what you're focused on. And I think as you get deeper into your program, you find the things in particular from year 1 to year 2 that are glaring things that you have to really address and hit every single day. And I think, so for me, it's a helpful thing to be really, really focused on these things in particular.
All right, Luke, I lied to you. Last one again.
That never
Mike
happens
Vrabel,
on this show.
You're good, buddy. I don't know. Have you talked to him recently? Because these reports, obviously it sucked that Tennessee relieved him of his duties and that he was out interviewing, but I saw some reports that teams didn't hire him because he's too manly. He's a large human being that's very intimidating. I'm guessing because you're good enough buddy with him, did you just call him and say, hey, tone down all that masculinity? Or have you had any conversations with him about how that all shook out?
Now, I'm not sure how you got your job now, Tausch. I mean, I didn't realize that
That's
you
true.
guys like you and him were that intimidating that I see why you didn't go into the NFL now, because they weren't going to hire you because you're intimidating and your appearance and your aura of everything.
Exactly why.
I understand that's why you stuck at home, but I have talked. Actually, I talked to him I think on Saturday, and we hadn't communicated for probably a week or so, just as the process was going, and he sounded, honest to God, he sounded like a new man. And I'm not sure exactly if this was his choice or what it is that the future really looks like, but I know that we're going to have a visitor here that's going to spend a little bit of time, hopefully, around us. Starting coming in the spring and some things like that, and see how deep we can get involved with my buddy and getting him around here. But I might have to be calling upon you, Tausch, because he is kind of a golf guy, and he's asked about some golf. So I might be reaching out to you to say, hey, I might need,
we can help him with that.
I don't do enough golf, so I figured that maybe the two guys can rekindle the playing days and have a round or two of golf if he's up here in the spring and in the fall.
I like that.
Yeah, that
Yes,
sounds
we can
great,
definitely do that.
but it sounds to me like you better make sure that when Vrabel comes to practice, Tausch isn't there, because that's just way too much manliness on one sideline. We can't have that.
We'll let
at
them
practice.
stay down
Very
in the
distracting.
corner where they usually are. Let them stay down there. Watch pass rush and things like that, where not as many people are collecting.
Maybe you'll be lucky enough and Tausch will be wearing his swim shirt while he's there. All right, Coach, we appreciate your time. This was really fun. Don't be a stranger. Don't let Tausch's short but lame questions before games affect you. Make sure you come back and visit us again soon. Thanks.
Anytime, guys. Have a good one.
That is Badgers head football coach Luke Fickell. Vrabel? Where did you read that Vrabel was too manly? That was a story?
Diana Rossini's reports. I even quoted it because I knew you'd fact check me. They didn't hire him because he's a large human being and very intimidating.
Physically intimidating. Yep.
What?
Vrabel.
Go ahead, check it. I know you'd be all fact checky on it. Don't you find that kind of intriguing? That it sounds like old Vrabes might be popping on up, checking some stuff out.
But yes, that was outstanding. That was really good. That's news right there. You broke news there, old football guy, analyst guy. Vrabel's going to be coming to Badgers practices and maybe hanging around.
In all honesty, though, we couldn't ask questions more differently. Like, I try, and I know I rambled on the one because I wanted to get both points. I didn't want to have to go through it.
Could have asked them separately, but sure.
You don't know which direction. You legitimately, I counted, I think your first question was 1 minute and 42 seconds long. 1:42.
For those of you scoring at home. We'll discuss those great questions.
Was that when he read the menu to him with the lime chicken?
Yeah, that doesn't count. That was like setting the table. That was
What
like
do you
getting
think?
him in the
Literally.
Do you think that Luke, I
Citrus
wonder what
lime
Luke
chicken.
is thinking as your. Yeah, I'd be curious. I'll ask
Text
him next
him.
time what he thought of that.
Bread and
Ask him,
coffee.
I will.
ask him for an instant
Bread
critique.
pudding.
Yeah, I wonder
All right, I'll do that.
I
See
do
if
want
I
to
get
know
a
what the
response.
dessert is, actually. We'll talk more about what Luke had to say next. It's Wilde and Tausch.